Hey everyone, thanks for joining Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and in today's video, look at a brand new game coming to Kickstarter called Wander: LaCluck's Revenge. This is the latest game from Barnacle Games. It is a 1 to 5 player game that takes roughly 1 to 2 hours to play, and is a fully cooperative game where all the players are working together to defeat whichever scenario they've chosen to go on. So this is the latest game in the Wanderer series, with the original one being Wander: The Call to Barnacle Bay. In that one, Elder Bane, the evil sorcerer, has descended upon this poor peaceful fishing village of Barnacle Bay and used his dark magics to corrupt its inhabitants, turning them into grotesque versions of themselves. Now, due to the events of the original game and that dark magic, that has now summoned LaCluck and her evil crew of the damned that have returned to Barnacle Bay to seek their vengeance on its village. And that's where you're going to come in as the players. You're going to be playing the heroes from the Wanderers Guild that are tasked with going back to Barnacle Bay to fight off LaCluck and her evil crew, sending them back to the watery depths from which they came. Now, each game in this series is a standalone game, or is also cross-compatible with any other game in this series, where you can mix and match any of the heroes from any of the games, as well as mixing and matching the enemies. And there's going to be a set of rules that'll tell you how you can change out the enemies, but each game can be played by itself, or again, you can mix and match changing these things out. Now, each game is also going to have a fully fleshed out campaign system that is going to be a choose your own adventure. Each time you complete a scenario, you'll have a branching story arc that'll let you choose different pathways and different options that you'll have to make as you work your way through, hopefully getting to the end and being able to fight off the big bad, which in this situation is going to be LaCluck. So in this video, I'm going to go over the main features of the game, and for those of you that are returning that are familiar with Wander, I'm also going to be covering the new features in this game that make this one unique. I'm also going to show you a sample turn to give you a good idea how this one plays. Now, if you want to check out a full playthrough, I'll have a link up in the top corner, where I'm going to be playing through the first, middle, and end few turns to give you a better idea how this one plays and progresses, to help you decide on whether or not this is one you want to add to your collection and back on Kickstarter. As always, if you find my videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. It's one of the easiest ways you can support channels like mine so we continue to grow and be able to produce this content. If you want to get notified anytime I drop new videos, also give that notification bell a ring, and that'll let you know when I drop new stuff. Now, before getting into the video, I do also want to point out that all the materials that I'm using here are prototype materials and are subject to change and look a lot better in the final production copy of the game. For any of those of you that have picked up Wander: The Call to Barnacle Bay, you know exactly what you're going to be getting and how well that game looks, and the production was so cool with that one. So you already know what to expect with this one. So let's go ahead and head to the table and we'll see what this is all about. The first thing to look at are the dice that are included in the game, and there's going to be a custom set of 6-sided dice that are included. These dice are going to have different icons on them, including the axe, which is going to count for successes in melee combat, as well as when making checks. You'll have arrows, which are going to count for successes with ranged attacks. You'll have one side with a shield, which will be used in defensive rolls. And finally, the critical. And these dice are exploding dice. And what does that mean? When you roll a critical, you get to roll another die. And you're going to continue rolling dice until you stop rolling criticals. And so this can have some really epic moments in combat. When you're rolling or when you're making a check or something, you can really have some exciting situations that come up from this. From there, let's take a look at the different heroes that players can play as. So each hero is going to have their own card that'll be slotted into their dashboard. Each hero's card is going to list the name of that hero on the top, along with all of their different abilities. At the beginning of the game, the player is going to get to choose one of the 2 starting abilities that they will gain and use throughout the game. And as the players level up, they're going to unlock new abilities, such as at level 2, each character is going to receive an extra action point. At level 3, they get to choose one of those abilities to activate. Same with level 4 and level 5. And so then this way, you can tailor your character based on both yours and your party's needs as you play through each mission. Then each character is going to have a number of hit points, their standard defense, and their knowledge. Below that is going to be slots for their health as well as their courage tokens. And then each character is going to have hands that they can slot different weapons and items in. And then they also have spots for different items that give them abilities throughout the game, such as armor and whatnot. Now each character is going to start with different items, and each item that they start with, for example with Lance's Morningstar, is going to list the type of weapon it is, the number of hands it's going to take up, and when it attacks, how many dice you're going to roll, and the icon you're looking for. Underneath that is going to be any starting or special abilities for that particular item. Such as with Lance's shield, this one is starting gear for Lance, but any critical defensive roll is going to cause knockdown on an enemy. And throughout the game, players are going to be able to gain all different kinds of items, such as the Torn Doublet that's going to give that character +1 HP and a defensive reroll. The Skeletor, which is a new weapon and allows that character to duel or it takes up both hands, but you get to roll more dice and it has a really nice ability. Or the Spectacles, and these are going to give the character a +1 attack reroll and +1 attacks against casters. So all kinds of different items, and these are just level 1 items. There'll be 3 different levels that characters will be able to have access through as they play through a campaign, and each item is going to be unique in the game. So you're never going to have 2 characters with the Torn Doublet or the Spectacles. Each character will have their own custom, different, unique items that will continue as the game goes on. And there are 5 different characters that players will be able to choose from in the core game. You'll have Lance the Warrior Priest, which he'll use his prayers to help his party. You'll have Amanda the Hunter, who is a brutal attacker. Cutlass Kate, who is a finesse fighter, will use her skill and speed to get her where she needs to go. Flintlock Rodriguez will use his dual pistols to wreak havoc on the enemies from distance. And Waku, the witch doctor, is going to use his auras and powers to decimate the enemies. Now, this wouldn't be much of a dungeon crawler without some really nasty enemies to go up against. And the Crew of the Damned definitely meet these requirements. Each of the enemies in this game are going to be controlled by a core set of rules, as well as they will have their own stats and abilities. Throughout the game, as players play through a campaign, the enemies are going to level up at certain points throughout that campaign as well, making them more and more challenging as players go on. And there are 4 main enemies that players are going to be interacting with throughout each of the scenarios, including Monkey Grunts, Pig Gunners, Albatross Banshees, and Rhino Cannoneers, with each of them having their own stats, including the amount of damage that they do when they attack, the type of attacks that they do, including melee and ranged attacks, their health, defense, and any special abilities that that enemy has. Another interesting feature with this game are the tiles themselves, as the Wonders are going to be making their way throughout the tiles to find the points that will allow them to descend into the bowels of the ship. When they reach these points and the tile is cleared, they're going to remove all of the different tokens from it and flip those tiles over, and then based on the scenario they're playing, they're going to repopulate and set up for the rest of the scenario. Alright, so the last thing I want to do before getting into the sample turn is to talk about some of the new features for those of you that are familiar with Wander the Cult of Barnacle Bay. So with these, there's some really interesting new features with this one that are going to make it very unique. First off, LaCluck's crew are all ghosts, and they have a special rule called Spooky. And each one of our characters now is going to have 2 courage points. Each time an enemy attacks them that has the Spooky special rule, they're going to lose one of those courage points. Even if they stop all of the damage from getting through, they are still going to lose their courage point. Now, players can get courage back by attacking and wounding enemies, and anytime a character runs out or a hero runs out of all of their courage, they are going to be spooked and are going to run away 2 spaces, as well as dropping down all the way down to the bottom of the initiative track, and then they'll gain their courage points back, and then they'll be able to take their next turn as normal. So this is going to add a new dynamic to the game, really changing up the initiative track and constantly having players shift around that. So you're really going to have to work a lot closer as a team to handle some of those effects. And there'll be other features in the game that are also going to impact that. The next feature I want to talk about is fire. So there's going to be a number of different ways that this is going to impact the players. First off, with the Rhino Cannoneers, anytime they attack and do any type of wounds to players, they're also going to ignite the space that they attack on fire. And then also, anytime the players fire the cannons that are around the stage, those are also going to ignite the stages or the spaces, as well as other features that are going to cause this. So going into it, each time a space gets lit on fire, you're going to place a fire token on there. And then at the end of the round, if those fire tokens have not been removed, then they're going to spread to each adjacent space that is adjacent to that space. So really quickly, fire can get out of hand. Now, as the players, when you are adjacent to a space that has fire or in a space that has fire, you can also take an action to try to put that fire out. In order to do that, you're going to check your knowledge and roll a number of dice based on that. Each axe that you roll is going to allow you to put out 1 fire that is adjacent to you, or if you roll a critical, you can put out all of the fires adjacent to you. So for example, if Flintlock Rodriguez was in this space and he rolled a critical, he would remove all of the fire from all spaces that he's adjacent to, including his space. So in that way, that is the way that the characters can be able to fight off fire before it gets out of hand. The other new feature with this one is dark water. So because LaCluck and her crew spew out dark energy, they are corrupting the water, poisoning it. So anytime a hero moves into a space with water, at this point, they are going to become poisoned and we'll have to deal with the effects of that. So in that way, you're going to have rafts that the players are going to be able to interact with, moving around safely throughout those water spaces. But there will be situations where players are either going to voluntarily jump into water, or because of the spooked effect, they might be forced to run into water spaces. Now, the other nasty thing with our enemies with this, with them being ghosts, they are both immune to the water and to fire effects. So if you thought that you could defeat the enemies by lighting spaces on fire, you're wrong. They will not be affected by that. So those are the main new features of the game. Let me know in the comments down below what you're the most excited about. From there, let's go ahead and take a look at this sample turn. The game itself is going to be played over rounds, which will be tracked on the initiative board. The initiative board is going to dictate when both characters and enemies are going to activate throughout that round, starting at the top and working your way through both characters and enemies. Now the board itself is going to be double-sided, with one side being the advanced side, which is showing in what I'm going to use, and then the other side is going to be the basic side, which is great for beginning players or if you're just looking for a lighter game. With the advanced side, you're going to have icons next to each one of the spaces that'll both impact the character and enemy next to that space. For example, with Lance, I'm in a defensive space, so my character is going to receive +1 defense whenever it rolls. Likewise, with the Grunts, they're in attack space, so Grunts normally only do 1 damage, but because they're in attack space, they're going to do an additional point of damage when they attack. So from here, let's get into the game itself. And so the first character to go is going to be Lance. During a player's actions, they're going to receive 2 actions that they can do a variety of things with. They can choose to move, and each move action allows them to get 2 movement points that they can spend to move to orthogonally adjacent spaces. So with Lance, I have a couple of options. I could jump into this darkness space, which is a vortex of magic that it could be good or bad. I don't know until I go in. Or I can move down and over to get next to the Grunt and hopefully attack him during my next action. The other option I have is an attack action, depending upon if you have a melee attack, which allows you to attack your space or an adjacent space to you, or if you have a ranged attack, which allows you to attack in a straight line all the way through until it hits a wall or a full space, which is a space that has 4 models in it, or some other effects that block line of sight, such as darkness spaces. So with this example, let's go ahead and look at an attack action. So with Lance, I'm going to go ahead and attack the Grunt. And so I'm going to check my weapons that I have equipped, and I get 3 dice for that, and it's going to tell me what icon I need with it as well. So with melee attacks, I need the axe or a critical. I'm also going to check my card for any other bonuses that give me anything or items, as well as the board, which right now I'm in a defensive space, so I won't get any bonuses for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and roll and see what I get. And I got an axe and a crit, so crits explode, which means I get to roll an extra die. And then from there, I'm going to total up my damage. So I've done 3 damage. Going over to the enemy, they have 1 defense, so that's going to eliminate 1 of those successes. And then the others are going to transfer over to wounds. And so that character, that Grunt, is going to take 2 damage out of the 3 that it has. So he's almost defeated. From there, then, that is the last action I can take, as those are the 2 actions I can perform during my turn. Now, other options you have are there's going to be certain things on the board, such as cannons and other effects based on the scenario you're playing, that you can choose to spend actions to interact with, or you can trade and do other things with characters that will also cost actions. From there, then, we're going to move on, and so the Grunts are the next ones to activate. So with this, anytime an enemy activates, if it attacks a character that it's adjacent to, then it is going to do damage to that character. You will not have to roll dice, and so the Grunt is going to do 2 damage, as it is in an attack space. So then Lance is going to have to make a defensive roll. So Lance's defense is 3. Then you're going to check on any items or anything he has and where he's at. So I will receive a bonus for the space that he's in, and I'll make that roll and see if I get anything from it. So I got a crit, so again, it's going to count as a success, and I get to roll another die. Unfortunately, it didn't come up with anything else, so I will take 1 wound from that. Then anytime an enemy attacks me, I'm also going to lose a courage because these are spooky enemies, and so I will lose a courage. If I lose my last courage, then I am spooked and I will have to run away 2 spaces from that enemy, and then I'll also drop down to the bottom space on that track. At that point, then I'll regain my courage and I'll be able to act as normal during my next turn. So from here, then the next grunt will go, and with this one, it does not have line of sight to our characters yet, so it has not been considered active and will not perform or will not move. Same thing with this grunt here. It does not see us right now because it is behind a wall, and so will also not activate during this turn. From there, we'll move on to the next character or enemy to go, and so it'll be Amanda to go. So now she has 2 actions. She is in a movement space. She does get a free move action as well. So I think we'll spend that to jump into this darkness space. So let's go ahead and reveal it. And it is a treasure space. So she's going to get to draw a treasure card. And she receives the spectacles. So this is going to give her a +1 attack reroll and +1 attack against casters. So that's really handy. So that was her first action, or free action. So now she has 2 actions remaining. So she's going to go ahead and jump in here as her second action. And her third action, she's going to go ahead and fire the cannon so we can see how that works. And she's going to target this space down here as there's a lot of enemies in there. And the cannon is an AoE effect, so it'll target all enemies in that space. So from there, then the cannons are going to let you roll 3 dice. And with cannons, you're looking for arrows or crits. So let's see if Amanda gets lucky. Ooh, wow, she got 2 crits. So we're going to roll 2 more dice. And then there's no more crits on that. So then she does get 1 reroll with the spectacles. So we'll reroll 1 of those dice. And it's another arrow. So she has 3 successes there. So again, that's going to target all enemies. So each one of the pigs is really squishy with no defense and 2 health. So both of those guys have been eliminated. And the grunt has 1 defense, so it's going to take 2 damage from that. On top of that, the cannon will light that space on fire, which isn't going to affect the enemies. And then Amanda is going to receive 2 experience points, 1 for each one of the pig gunners that she eliminated. That was her final action, so that is the last thing that she can do, and so it's going to continue on with the next character to go. So at this point, then Rodriguez would get to take his turn. This is going to continue going as you work your way through the initiative board, activating each other character and enemy based on that. So from here, now I want to talk about a couple of other things with this. So first off, with the initiative board, again, going back to that, there are ways that you can manipulate that. During your turn, instead of spending actions, you can spend your entire turn to move up to the top or bottom of the initiative track. This is important as enemies, when they are targeting spaces that have multiple characters in them, will always target the character that is highest on that initiative track. So no matter how many characters in this space, right now Lance is the highest on that track, so he's always going to be the one that's attacked in that situation. In that, as Lance takes damage, it might not be the best for him to be on the top of that track, because if you receive a number of wounds based on your hit points, then you are knocked out, and your character will be placed on its side, and you'll lose 1 point on your morale track. If the party ever drops to the bottom of that track, then the game is over and the players have lost. So you have to be careful on how you manage that. So in that situation, their other characters might want to jump up higher on that track. For example, Amanda might want to jump up to the top of that. So instead of taking her turn, she's going to spend her entire turn to jump to the top of that track, and then she would be targeted in that situation. From there, the next thing I want to talk about is as the characters gain experience points, each time a character moves into a new level, that character is going to receive an additional perk or ability that they will have active from that point on. On top of that, the first time a character moves into the next highest level, so the first time one of our characters moves into level 2, all the rest of our characters are really excited about that and will receive an experience point for that. Unfortunately, because of that, they've generated too much noise, and so then you're also going to resolve a spawn based on which level you go into. The higher up you go, the nastier those become as well. And with spawn cards, each one of them, again, is going to be based on the level and will spawn a number of enemies in the closest spawn point to the character that leveled up. Now, the other things to look at are with these darkness spaces. So let's go ahead and say with this one, we had a character that jumped into here. This is an event space. So in that situation, you're going to reveal the top card from the event deck and read through it. And with a lot of these, they're going to have you do a check of some sort where you're going to be rolling dice, and based on the number of successes you get, will trigger different effects or different outcomes with those cards, with some being good and others being very bad. So I hope this gives you a good idea how the game plays. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. Or swing by the Kickstarter's main page and drop any questions you have there as well. I'm sure the creators would love to hear from you and are more than happy to answer any questions you have. Until next time, I'll see you later.